joined now by former MP Sir Nicholas Soames, the grandson of Winston Churchill and close friend of King Charles III. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I suppose we're going to have to get used to everything that has happened, the passing of the Queen, the fact that something you would have anticipated for a long time, that your close friend has gone from being Prince Charles to King Charles III. How are you feeling this morning?
Well, I really have to say that I think it's a very, very black day. And I've been struck, as I'm sure you must have been, by the tributes that you will have heard over the last night and overnight and earlier this morning, of the beauty of the tributes. So I think the words that have been used have been really wonderful, very thoughtful. I think a lot of them have got the Queen exactly right and show the enormously high regard and profound affection and admiration in which she was held by her people all over the world.
Which words would you add to that?
Well, I can only add that I regard this as being a terrible day. It's the end of an era, 70 years of impeccable, unimpeachable public service. I thought the words you played just now from the Queen's first Christmas message, I mean, honestly, she could have made that address today. And you're so right that the Christmas message was a source of great comfort to a lot of people. I particularly remember the COVID one during the second year of COVID, I think, when she said, "We will meet again. We will all meet again. We will meet again." I thought that was so beautifully and movingly expressed by the Queen. But, for I'm old, I'm 74 now. I mean, I was born when the late King was still on the throne. But, I mean, my only memories of the monarch are, from a child onwards, are of the Queen. And for most of us, our generation, we have grown up with the Queen as our head of state and as the sort of absolute guarantor, in my view, of our stability through hard times, through bad times, through thick and thin. The Queen was always there, a wonderfully reassuring, calm, I think, sage figure, fortified and sustained, obviously, by a profound faith. So my feeling is one of desperate sadness. I really am so sad for her family. And I think it's also worth remembering that, the King has lost his father only quite recently and now loses his mother. And for all the royal family, this is, on every count, a very, very bad day indeed.
Yes, indeed. And we will talk about King Charles III in just a moment. I wonder whether you could give an idea to the people listening of the very strong connection between the Queen and your family over the years. I think I'm right in saying that when your grandfather died in 1965, the Queen broke royal protocol and arrived at his funeral before your family.
She did. It was the most touching act of respect by the Queen for her first Prime Minister. My grandfather loved the Queen. I mean, that is the only word to use. It's the only word, even respectfully, can begin to cover his feelings for this young sovereign. I think the Queen found him a great comfort. I think she must have been slightly alarmed to start with. But on the other hand, she'd known him since she was a little girl. After all, I mean, we've only lived in the shadow of one monarch. Churchill served 6 of the kings and queens of Britain. He was commissioned into the British Army in the reign of Queen Victoria, and he died in the reign of Queen Elizabeth. And it's such an extraordinary thing, the telescope of history, isn't it, that her first Prime Minister was of an age to have charged on a horse with a sword at the last cavalry charge of the British Army at Omdurman. to have fought in the First World War, to have been a post-war prime minister, and her current prime minister wasn't even born when she ascended to the throne. And it is an extraordinary reign. It is an absolutely extraordinary thing. And I think the country is, for very obvious reasons, going to feel it very, very, very deeply indeed.
Well, very much. The listeners who've been getting in touch with us this morning have expressed that exact point, that they feel very touched, and some of them are surprised that they feel so intensely and profoundly touched by what has happened. I wonder whether we could just talk briefly about your friendship, your closeness with the new king. Now, you've made the point quite rightly that he is, of course, mourning first for his father and now for his mother. Do you have any thoughts about how prepared the new king is for his future role?
Look, I think it would be impertinent of me to go too far on this, but I would just say that he has been very, very well prepared, and prepared himself for this moment, which was always going to come. He has made, in my view, a great success of a job of the Prince of Wales for which there is no job description. He has achieved some remarkable, really extraordinary things, national things of national importance. But he now becomes, and he now is the monarch. He is now the king. And he is therefore subject to all the conventions of kingship. And it will be a different person to the person we knew before. It'll be the same man in every way, great heart, very, very dear person, but with the added burden of kingship. And I think it's one of the greatest challenges that he faces, really. And I think, one of the things that I was reflecting last night with Andrew Marr, that I think one of the most astonishing things about the Queen was how she managed to be familiar to all of us, and in an age of sort of brute, gross, ghastly celebrity, she managed to be familiar to her people at the same time as retaining very much the mystique of sovereignty and monarchy. And I think that is a tremendous challenge in the days in which we live, for obvious reasons.
Yes, that was beautifully put. Thank you very much for talking to us this morning. That is the former MP, Sir Nicholas Soames, the grandson of Winston Churchill and close friend of the new King Charles III.
And it's one of those moments where you reflect the grandson of Churchill talking about the Queen's behaviour at Churchill's funeral, and the fact that she had a relationship with Churchill. She now has a relationship with 15 prime ministers of this country. And this notion that a lot of people have said, I mean, you can never know how true this is, but it almost felt like she was holding on for that final duty to make sure she was there to see the passing over peacefully of power from Boris Johnson to Liz Truss. And that was the thing she managed to get to, which was a kind of an act of endurance in itself. At the end of her life, she was still there when that moment of history happened.
I was very struck by what Sir Nicholas Soames said at the beginning, though. He said, "This is a terrible day. This is awful."